The mahogany conference table reflected the crystal chandelier above as 20 of the nation's wealthiest young adults adjusted their designer suits and checked their diamond-studded watches. None of them noticed the girl in the corner wearing a simple cotton dress and scuffed boots, her calloused hands folded quietly in her lap. They had no idea they were sitting in the same room as one of the deadliest people alive. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Emma Blake had dreamed of many things while milking cows at dawn on her family's Nebraska farm, but being surrounded by trust fund babies at the most exclusive security academy in America wasn't one of them. The acceptance letter had arrived 3 months ago, crisp letterhead bearing the Blackwater Corporate Security Academy seal, offering her a full scholarship to their executive protection program. No explanation for why a farm girl from Millbrook had been selected from thousands of applicants. No mention of the recommendation letter that had mysteriously appeared in their admissions office. The academy's Gothic stone buildings rose from manicured Connecticut hills like monuments to privilege and power. Each window gleamed with imported glass. Each doorway was carved from Italian marble. Students arrived in Bentleys and Lamborghinis, their parents' names gracing Forbes lists and political headlines. The dormitory rooms featured silk curtains and Persian rugs, accommodations that cost more per month than Emma's family earned in a season. Emma's single piece of luggage sat beside her narrow bed like a refugee among royalty. Inside were 3 identical cotton dresses, work boots that had walked through Nebraska mud for years, and a folded American flag that had draped her father's coffin. She touched the flag gently, remembering Commander James Blake's weathered face and the secrets he'd whispered during late-night conversations by their farmhouse fireplace. The orientation hall buzzed with conversations about Swiss boarding schools, Mediterranean yacht trips, and family business empires. Emma listened from her assigned seat in the back row, cataloging voices and personalities with instinctive precision. Tyler Richardson commanded attention from the center of the room, his perfectly styled hair and custom-tailored jacket marking him as natural aristocracy. His father owned the largest private military contracting firm in North America, and Tyler wore that legacy like armor. Jessica Hartwell sat beside him, her jewelry catching light with every gesture as she regaled nearby students with stories of her summer in Monaco. Her family's pharmaceutical empire had funded 3 wings of the academy, ensuring her a permanent place among the untouchable elite. Around them clustered sons and daughters of senators, oil executives and tech moguls, their laughter ringing with the confidence of people who'd never known failure. Director Amanda Foster took the podium with military bearing, her silver hair pulled back severely as she surveyed the assembled students. Her voice carried across the hall with practiced authority, welcoming them to 6 months of intensive training in executive protection, tactical awareness, and crisis management. She spoke of the Academy's reputation for producing the finest private security professionals in the world, bodyguards and advisors, who commanded 6-figure salaries protecting the global elite. Emma's eyes tracked every detail of the director's presentation, noting the security cameras positioned throughout the hall, the discreet emergency exits, and the nervous energy of Academy staff members positioned along the walls. Her training had taught her to read environments instinctively, to spot potential threats and escape routes within seconds of entering any space. The habit was so deeply ingrained that she couldn't turn it off, even here among America's privileged youth. The presentation continued with discussions of tactical firearms training, defensive driving techniques, and threat assessment protocols. Students would learn to identify suspicious behavior, coordinate with law enforcement, and protect high-value targets in various environments. The curriculum sounded impressive, though Emma recognized most of the techniques from her own considerably more advanced training. During the break, Tyler Richardson's voice cut through the ambient conversation like a blade. "Check out the farm equipment in the corner," he announced loudly enough for half the room to hear. His finger pointed directly at Emma, who sat reading the Academy handbook with quiet concentration. "I didn't know they were offering agricultural scholarships now." Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd as heads turned to examine Emma more closely. Her simple dress and practical shoes stood out sharply against the designer fashion surrounding her. Jessica Hartwell giggled behind her manicured hand, whispering something that made her companions smirk with practiced cruelty. Emma looked up from her handbook, meeting Tyler's gaze with steady eyes that revealed nothing. She'd faced far worse than entitled bullies during her years of service, though these particular adversaries knew nothing about the woman they were targeting. Her fingers remained relaxed in her lap, despite every combat instinct screaming at her to respond to the challenge. "Maybe she's here to learn about protecting livestock," Jessica added with theatrical innocence. "I bet she knows all about handling dangerous farm animals." The comment triggered another wave of snickering from their circle of admirers, young people who'd learned cruelty as naturally as they'd learned French or piano. Tyler stood and approached Emma's table with the swagger of someone accustomed to dominance. His expensive cologne preceded him like a warning, sharp and overwhelming in the air-conditioned space. Up close, Emma could see the softness around his jawline that suggested a life free from real hardship, the perfectly straight teeth that spoke of the finest orthodontic care money could buy. "Hey there, farm girl," he said, his voice carrying just enough volume to ensure nearby students could hear every word. "You sure you're in the right building? The community college agricultural program is about 50 miles down the road." His friends gathered behind him like a pack of well-dressed wolves, their anticipation almost palpable. Emma closed her handbook slowly and looked up at Tyler with the same expression she might use to study a particularly uninteresting insect. Her father had taught her that bullies fed on fear and reaction, that the strongest response was often no response at all. She'd learned that lesson in environments far more dangerous than this pristine academy hall. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she replied simply, her Nebraska accent soft but clear. The words carried no challenge, no anger, just quiet certainty that somehow made Tyler's smirk falter for just a moment. Jessica stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "How adorable," she cooed with false sweetness. "She really thinks she belongs here with the rest of us. I wonder what kind of recommendation got a cow milker into Blackwater Academy." Her tone dripped with the particular venom that only came from a lifetime of looking down on others. The crowd around them grew larger as more students gravitated toward the entertainment. Emma found herself the center of a circle that felt increasingly hostile. Young faces flushed with the excitement of witnessing someone else's humiliation. She recognized the dynamic from her psychological training, the way group mentality could transform otherwise reasonable people into a mob. Tyler leaned closer, placing his hands on Emma's table with possessive confidence. "Listen, sweetheart," he said.
"Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story,"
said, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was an intimidating whisper. "This place isn't for charity cases. The people here are going to protect the most important individuals in the world. We need to know our teammates can handle real pressure, not just worried about whether the chickens are fed." Emma's hands remained perfectly still on the closed handbook, though something flickered deep in her eyes that Tyler was too inexperienced to recognize. She'd heard similar speeches from drill sergeants, who would have eaten Tyler Richardson for breakfast, delivered by men and women who'd earned their authority through blood and sacrifice rather than inherited wealth. "I can handle pressure," Emma said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that made several students step unconsciously backward. There was something in her tone that suggested she'd faced pressures these privileged children couldn't begin to imagine, challenges that made their worst nightmares seem like bedtime stories. But Tyler was too intoxicated by his audience to notice the warning signs. He straightened to his full height, his chest puffed with inherited arrogance. "Right," he laughed, the sound harsh in the suddenly quiet hall. "I'm sure you've faced all kinds of pressure, deciding whether to plant corn or soybeans, figuring out which pig to slaughter for Christmas dinner." The laughter that followed was sharp and cruel, the kind that left wounds that never fully healed. Emma absorbed it without flinching, her breathing steady and controlled despite the humiliation burning in her chest. She thought of her father's voice during those late-night conversations, his warnings about the cost of revealing too much too soon. Director Foster's voice cut through the mockery like a knife. "Mr. Richardson, Miss Hartwell, I believe Your behavior is beneath the standards we expect from Blackwater Academy students." Her tone carried military authority that made the entire group snap to attention, their laughter dying instantly. Tyler turned toward the director with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. "Of course, Director Foster. We were just getting acquainted with our new classmate, making sure she feels welcome." His smile was perfect and empty, a politician's expression learned from watching his father navigate corporate boardrooms. Director Foster's eyes moved from Tyler to Emma, taking in the scene with professional assessment. Emma met her gaze without defiance or pleading, simply waiting to see how this particular authority figure would handle the situation. The director's expression revealed nothing as she processed what she'd witnessed. "Blake will prove herself quite capable during our training exercises," Director Foster said finally. "Perhaps we should reserve judgment until we see everyone's performance under actual pressure." Her words carried diplomatic neutrality that satisfied no one while offending no one directly. The crowd began to disperse as the break period ended, students returning to their assigned seats with disappointed expressions. The entertainment was over, at least for now. Tyler cast one last smirk in Emma's direction before sauntering back to his place among the academy elite, already planning his next move in what he saw as an amusing game. Emma remained in her seat, hands still folded over her handbook, processing the encounter with tactical precision. She'd identified the primary threats in her new environment, cataloged their methods and weaknesses, and confirmed what she'd suspected from the moment she'd arrived. This place operated on the same power dynamics that governed every hierarchical organization she'd ever encountered. The difference was that these particular adversaries had never faced real danger, never been tested by anything more challenging than choosing which trust fund to access for their next purchase. They played at being warriors while having no understanding of what true warfare actually demanded. Their cruelty was petty and personal, lacking the focused intensity that came from genuine stakes. As Director Foster resumed her presentation, Emma opened her handbook and continued reading as if nothing had happened. But beneath her calm exterior she was already planning, not revenge, which was a luxury she couldn't afford, but preparation for the inevitable moment when her true capabilities would be revealed. Her father's voice whispered through memory, reminding her that the strongest steel was forged in the hottest fires. The presentation covered advanced surveillance techniques, threat assessment protocols, and crisis communication strategies. Emma absorbed every detail while simultaneously monitoring the other students' reactions. Some seemed genuinely interested in the material, while others treated it as an expensive game they were required to play before inheriting their predetermined positions in their families' enterprises. Tyler Richardson doodled in his notebook while whispering jokes to nearby students, his attention divided between showing off and maintaining his image as someone too important to take the training seriously. Jessica Hartwell filed her nails, while occasionally glancing at Emma with predatory satisfaction, already planning future humiliations for the girl who dared to intrude on their exclusive world. But Emma Blake sat perfectly still, her farm girl exterior hiding one of the most dangerous individuals any of them would ever encounter. She'd survived missions that would break these spoiled children, faced enemies who would eat Tyler Richardson alive, and learned lessons in places where failure meant death rather than disappointment. The orientation was just beginning, and none of them had any idea what they'd gotten themselves into by targeting the quiet girl from Nebraska. Emma's real education had happened in shadows and silence, in places where the stakes were measured in lives rather than social status. Soon enough they'd all discover exactly what kind of pressure she could handle. The mahogany table continued reflecting the chandelier's light as the day wore on, but something had shifted in the room's dynamics. Emma Blake had been marked as prey by predators, who'd never encountered anything more dangerous than a stock market downturn. They had no way of knowing they'd just made the worst mistake of their privileged lives. The deliberate humiliation, the academy dining hall stretched before them like a cathedral of privilege, its vaulted ceilings adorned with oil paintings of military legends and corporate titans. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over mahogany tables where the nation's wealthiest children gathered for their evening meal, their conversations a symphony of inherited confidence and casual extravagance. Emma Blake stood in the entrance holding a simple metal tray, her cotton dress, a stark contrast to the silk blouses and designer blazers surrounding her. The serving staff had provided her with the same gourmet meal offered to every student, but she might as well have been holding prison rations for all the attention it attracted from her classmates. Tyler Richardson occupied the center table like a king holding court, his perfectly pressed shirt and platinum watch catching light with every gesture. His voice carried across the dining hall with practiced projection, regaling his audience with tales of his father's latest defense contract and their family's upcoming ski vacation in Switzerland. The students surrounding him hung on every word with the desperate attention of courtiers seeking favor. Jessica Hartwell sat at his right hand, her pharmaceutical heiress crown secured by birth rather than merit. She picked delicately at her truffle-enhanced salad while describing her mother's charity gala, where celebrities and politicians had competed to donate obscene sums to causes they barely understood. Her jewelry sparkled like captured starlight as she gestured, each piece worth more than most people earned in a decade. Emma found an empty table near the kitchen doors, a location that made her nearly invisible to the academy's social hierarchy. She ate methodically, her attention split between the conversations around her and the tactical assessment that had become second nature. The dining hall had 3 primary exits, 2 service entrances, and enough hiding spots behind marble columns to stage an effective defensive action if necessary. The habit of constant threat evaluation was so deeply ingrained that she couldn't suppress it even in this supposedly safe environment. Every person represented a potential asset or liability. Every piece of furniture could serve as cover or concealment. Every sound carried information about the mood and movement of the crowd around her. Tyler's laughter boomed across the hall as he finished another story about his exploits at his previous boarding school, where he'd apparently convinced a naive instructor to let him skip combat training because of a fictitious shoulder injury. His friends applauded the deception with admiring chuckles, clearly viewing dishonesty as a valuable skill rather than a character flaw. "The key is knowing which rules apply to people like us," Tyler announced, his voice carrying just enough volume to reach Emma's table. "Some regulations are meant for the help, not for those of us who actually matter." His eyes found Emma across the crowded room, and his smile took on a predatory edge. He rose from his throne with theatrical flourish, his movements drawing attention from across the dining hall. Students paused their conversations to watch the entertainment, sensing that Tyler Richardson was about to provide another demonstration of his particular brand of cruelty. He approached Emma's table with the confidence of a lion stalking a wounded gazelle. "Well, well," Tyler said, coming to stand directly behind Emma's chair. "Look what we have here. The farm girl is actually eating real food instead of slop from a trough." His friends followed like a pack of hyenas, their anticipation almost palpable as they surrounded Emma's isolated table. Emma continued eating without acknowledging his presence, her movements calm and measured despite the growing audience. She'd learned long ago that bullies fed on reaction, that the best defense was often to deny them the satisfaction of visible fear or anger. Her fork moved steadily from plate to mouth, each bite chewed thoroughly before swallowing. Jessica appeared at Tyler's shoulder, her eyes bright with malicious excitement. "Maybe she's confused by all the silverware," she suggested with false concern. "Back home, I bet they just eat with their hands like the animals." Her voice carried clearly through the suddenly quiet dining hall, drawing snickers from nearby tables. Tyler circled Emma's table like a shark testing its prey, his expensive shoes clicking against the polished stone floor. "You know, sweetheart," he said, leaning down close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with the wine he'd somehow acquired despite academy rules. "I've been thinking about your scholarship situation. It really doesn't make sense that someone like you would be here." He straightened and addressed his audience with the flair of a practiced performer. I mean, what could a corn-fed country girl possibly know about protecting important people? Have you ever even seen a real weapon farm girl? Or do you just use pitchforks and rusty shotguns to scare away the crows? The laughter that followed was sharp and cutting, designed to slice through Emma's composure and leave her bleeding dignity on the dining room floor. Several students held up their phones, recording the humiliation for later entertainment and social media mockery. The cruelty was casual and confident, the behavior of people who'd never faced consequences for their actions. Emma set down her fork with deliberate precision, and looked up at Tyler for the first time since he'd approached. Her eyes were calm and steady, revealing nothing of the calculations running through her tactical mind. She'd faced interrogation by enemy agents who would have considered Tyler Richardson's amateur psychological warfare laughable. "I know enough," she said quietly, her Nebraska accent soft but clear in the suddenly attentive dining hall. The simplicity of her response seemed to catch Tyler off guard, as if he'd expected tears or angry protests that would have provided more entertainment value. Tyler recovered quickly, his politician smile returning as he played to his audience. "Enough about what, milking cows, shoveling manure? Because that's not exactly relevant to executive protection, sweetheart." He turned to include his friends in the conversation, seeking their validation and support. Jessica stepped forward with predatory grace, her manicured fingers drumming against the edge of Emma's table. "I bet she's never even been in a real city before this," she announced with theatrical wonder. "Probably thinks that little farming town of hers is cosmopolitan because it has a McDonald's and a gas station." The mockery continued to build as more students joined the circle around Emma's table, drawn by the spectacle like moths to flame. Emma found herself the center of attention for all the wrong reasons, surrounded by hostile faces and recording devices that would preserve this moment for future humiliation. Tyler leaned forward, placing his hands flat on Emma's table with possessive authority. "Here's what I think happened," he said, his voice taking on the tone of someone solving a mystery. "Some bleeding-heart administrator felt sorry for you and decided to give the poor farm girl a chance to see how the other half lives. Kind of like a Make-A-Wish situation, except instead of being terminally ill, you're just terminally poor." The cruelty of the comparison drew gasps and nervous laughter from the assembled students. Even some who'd remained neutral up to this point seemed shocked by Tyler's willingness to escalate the humiliation to such personal levels. But Emma absorbed the attack without flinching, her breathing steady and controlled despite the venom being directed at her. "The problem is," Tyler continued, emboldened by the lack of resistance, "this isn't a charity field trip. This is serious training for serious people. We're going to be protecting senators and CEOs and foreign dignitaries, people whose lives actually matter to the world economy and global stability." He straightened to his full height, gesturing grandly at the assembled students. "Everyone else here has connections, resources, experience with high-stakes situations. Their families move in the circles we'll be protecting. They understand the culture, the expectations, the subtle signs of danger that come from years of exposure to real power." Emma's hands remained folded in her lap, though something flickered deep in her eyes that Tyler was too intoxicated by his own performance to notice. She'd protected people whose importance made Tyler's example seem like small-town politicians, faced dangers that would reduce these privileged children to crying children, and learned lessons in environments where failure meant death rather than embarrassment. "You, on the other hand," Tyler said, pointing directly at Emma's face, "come from a world where the biggest security threat is probably a raccoon getting into the garbage. How exactly do you plan to recognize an international assassin when you've probably never seen anything more dangerous than an angry rooster?" The dining hall erupted in laughter and applause, students clapping as if they'd witnessed a masterful performance rather than calculated cruelty. Several held their phones higher to capture Emma's reaction, hoping to document the moment when the farm girl finally broke under the pressure of their sophisticated torture. But Emma Blake didn't break. She sat perfectly still,
absorbing the mockery with the same composure she'd shown when facing down enemy combatants in hostile territory. Her father's voice whispered through memory, reminding her that the strongest people often appeared the weakest until the moment they chose to reveal their true nature. Jessica clapped her hands together with theatrical delight. "Oh, this is precious," she announced to the gathered crowd. "Look at her just sitting there like a cow waiting to be milked. I bet she doesn't even understand half the words Tyler is using." Her pharmaceutical heiress upbringing had taught her to deliver poison with a smile. Tyler basked in the attention, his confidence soaring as he played to an increasingly enthusiastic audience. "You know what we should do," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vaulted space. "We should give our farm girl a real education, show her what actual sophistication looks like." He signaled to a nearby waiter with the imperious gesture of someone accustomed to immediate service. "Bring us a bottle of your finest wine," he commanded. Despite academy regulations strictly forbidding alcohol consumption by students, "We're going to teach country mouse here about civilized dining." The waiter hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the request and the growing spectacle. But Tyler's family name carried weight, even among the academy staff. Within moments, an expensive bottle of French wine appeared on Emma's table, its label proclaiming origins and vintage that represented more money than Emma's family saw in months. "Now then, farm girl," Tyler said, pouring wine into a crystal glass with exaggerated ceremony. "Let's see if you can handle something more complex than moonshine and creek water." He set the glass in front of Emma with a flourish that drew appreciative murmurs from his audience. Emma looked at the wine glass without touching it, her expression unchanged by Tyler's theatrical presentation. She'd consumed alcohol in dozens of countries during covert operations, everything from Russian vodka to Middle Eastern Iraq, usually while gathering intelligence or maintaining cover identities that required her to blend seamlessly into local culture. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Jessica taunted, noting Emma's lack of enthusiasm. "Don't know which fork to use for the fancy French wine. Maybe you should stick to milk and farm fresh eggs." Her laughter was sharp and cutting, designed to slice through whatever dignity Emma had left. Tyler leaned closer, his wine-sweetened breath warm against Emma's ear. "You know what I think," he whispered, loud enough for nearby students to hear every word. "I think you're nothing more than a tourist, a little farm mouse who wandered into a world she'll never understand, never belong to, and never contribute to in any meaningful way." He straightened and addressed his audience with renewed vigor. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Blackwater Academy's affirmative action success story. Proof that good intentions and charitable feelings can't actually bridge the gap between breeding and mediocrity." The applause that followed was thunderous, students rising from their seats to show appreciation for Tyler's performance. Emma remained seated throughout the ovation, her hands still folded in her lap, her expression revealing nothing of the storm building behind her calm exterior. As the clapping died down, Tyler executed a theatrical bow before returning his attention to Emma. "Any final words, farm girl? Any profound wisdom from the cornfields that might enlighten us sophisticated city folk?" His smile was sharp enough to cut glass, cruel enough to leave permanent scars on someone less prepared for psychological warfare. Emma looked up at him with the same steady gaze that had faced down enemy interrogators, terrorist leaders, and hostile forces in a dozen different countries. When she spoke, her voice carried quietly through the suddenly attentive dining hall, soft but somehow commanding attention despite its gentle
tone. "I appreciate the education," she said simply, her Nebraska accent clear but unashamed. "It's been very informative." The words carried no challenge, no anger, no promise of retaliation, just acknowledgement that she'd received Tyler's message and processed it completely. But something in her tone made several students step backward instinctively, though they couldn't have explained why. There was a quality to her voice that suggested she'd faced far worse than privileged bullies, and survived experiences that would break Tyler Richardson before breakfast. The intimidating arena,
The Blackwater Corporate Security Academy revealed its true nature in the days following Emma's dining hall humiliation. What had initially appeared as an educational institution transformed into something resembling a military compound crossed with an exclusive country club, where the children of America's elite played at being warriors while their trust funds ensured they'd never face real danger. The Tactical Training Center stretched across 20 acres of Connecticut countryside, its reinforced concrete bunkers and steel obstacles designed to simulate urban warfare scenarios. Mannequins dressed as diplomats and businessmen populated mock offices and limousines, while hidden speakers could generate everything from gunfire sounds to terrorist threats in 17 different languages. The facility had cost more than most small nations spent on their entire military budgets. Emma walked the perimeter during her free time, mapping exits and defensive positions with instinctive precision. Her simple cotton dress and work boots seemed absurdly out of place among the high-tech training equipment, but her eyes catalogued every detail with professional thoroughness. The Academy's designers had spared no expense in creating realistic scenarios, though she recognized several flaws in their setup that could be exploited by determined attackers. The dormitory building rose 7 stories above manicured grounds, its Gothic architecture concealing modern security systems and luxury amenities that rivaled 5-star hotels. Each student room featured Italian marble bathrooms, silk window treatments, and original artwork worth more than most people's homes. The message was clear: even while training to protect others, these future bodyguards would never experience anything approaching genuine hardship. Emma's assigned room occupied the building's top floor, a location that provided excellent sightlines across the entire campus but also left her isolated from the social clusters forming among her classmates. Her single suitcase looked pathetically small beside the designer luggage and military surplus equipment that filled neighboring rooms, but she'd learned long ago that effectiveness had nothing to do with expensive gear. The training schedule demanded 14-hour days split between classroom instruction and practical exercises. Students learned threat assessment protocols from retired Secret Service agents, defensive driving techniques from former military contractors, and firearms handling from Olympic marksmen who'd never faced return fire. The instruction was comprehensive and expensive, though Emma noticed significant gaps in combat psychology and stress inoculation that suggested none of the instructors had experience with actual life-or-death situations. Director Amanda Foster maintained iron discipline throughout the academy, her military bearing commanding respect from even the most privileged students. She'd risen through the ranks of Army intelligence before accepting her current position, bringing operational experience that most of her wealthy charges would never possess. During her daily briefings, she emphasized that executive protection required absolute professionalism, split-second decision-making, and the willingness to sacrifice one's life for their assigned protectee. The weapon vault occupied the academy's basement level, its climate-controlled environment housing everything from concealed carry pistols to military-grade assault rifles. Students learned to field strip and reassemble dozens of different firearms, memorizing their capabilities and limitations while practicing marksmanship on electronic ranges that could simulate any environment from urban rooftops to desert compounds. The collection represented millions of dollars in cutting-edge weaponry, available to teenagers whose primary qualification was their family's net worth. Emma handled each weapon with professional competence, her movements economical and precise despite having no official training record. She consistently outperformed her classmates on the shooting range, though she deliberately kept her scores high enough to avoid suspicion while not quite reaching the excellence that would draw unwanted attention. Her instructors noted her natural aptitude without questioning its source. The medical training facility occupied an entire wing of the main building, equipped with surgical suites and trauma simulation equipment that rivaled major hospitals. Students learned to treat gunshot wounds, stabilize bleeding, and perform emergency procedures under simulated stress conditions. Mannequins leaked artificial blood while speakers generated screaming and chaos designed to test their composure under pressure. Emma moved through the medical scenarios with calm efficiency, her hands steady while classmates panicked around her. She'd performed actual battlefield medicine under real enemy fire, treating wounds that would haunt her memories forever. But she maintained her cover by asking basic questions and following instructor guidance with apparent uncertainty. The Academy's computer center housed servers and analysis equipment capable of conducting background investigations, surveillance coordination and threat assessment on global scales. Students learned to use facial recognition software, communication intercept systems and database searches that could reveal intimate details about anyone's life within minutes. The technology was impressive, though Emma recognized several systems she'd helped develop during her military service. Tyler Richardson dominated every training session with the same arrogance he'd displayed in the dining hall, his loud voice and theatrical gestures drawing attention while his actual performance remained mediocre at best. His expensive tactical gear and custom-fitted uniforms created an impression of competence that his skills couldn't support, but his family connections ensured that instructors treated his mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. Jessica Hartwell approached training exercises like fashion shows, her designer tactical wear and perfectly applied makeup suggesting she viewed the academy as an expensive game rather than serious preparation. She complained constantly about broken nails and sweaty conditions, treating the instructors like personal servants who existed to accommodate her comfort rather than challenge her abilities. The obstacle course stretched across several acres behind the main building, its walls, trenches and barriers designed to test physical fitness and mental toughness under controlled conditions. Students were expected to complete the course in full tactical gear while carrying weighted packs, their times recorded and ranked to encourage competition among the wealthy participants. Emma completed the course consistently in the middle of the pack, deliberately avoiding the attention that superior performance would attract. She could have finished in half the time while carrying twice the weight, but maintaining her cover required calculated mediocrity that tested her patience more than any physical challenge the academy could devise. The scenario houses occupied a dedicated section of campus, full-scale replicas of diplomatic residences, corporate boardrooms and luxury hotels, where students practiced protection details under realistic conditions. Hidden cameras recorded their every movement while instructors played various threats, from paparazzi photographers to armed terrorists attempting assassination or kidnapping. During these exercises, Emma observed her classmates' reactions to simulated danger with professional. Most froze or panicked when faced with unexpected threats, their expensive training evaporating under even artificial stress. Tyler Richardson's bluster disappeared completely when confronted with mock gunfire, while Jessica Hartwell became hysterical at the first sign of physical danger. The Academy Library contained thousands of books on security topics, from historical assassinations to modern counterterrorism techniques. Emma spent her evening hours reading voraciously, though most of the material covered ground she'd learned through direct experience rather than academic study. She made careful notes in margins, playing the role of an eager student while actually analyzing tactical approaches she might need in the future. The dining facility served meals that would have been appropriate at high-end restaurants, its kitchen staff trained to accommodate dietary restrictions and cultural preferences from around the world. Students ate from bone china while discussing protection assignments they'd never actually perform, their conversations revealing how little they understood about the realities of their chosen profession. Emma continued to occupy isolated tables during meals, her presence barely acknowledged by classmates who'd already categorized her as irrelevant to their social hierarchy. She listened to their discussions with tactical interest, cataloging personalities and relationships that might become important if circumstances changed dramatically. The Academy's reputation attracted visitors from military and intelligence agencies who came to recruit promising graduates for government service. Former Navy SEALs, CIA operatives and Secret Service agents delivered guest lectures on specialized topics, their war stories both inspiring and cautioning students about the realities they'd face in the field. Emma sat in the back during these presentations, fighting the urge to correct factual errors or challenge incomplete explanations. Several guest speakers had served in units where she'd operated, though none showed any sign of recognizing the quiet farm girl who asked no questions and drew no attention to herself. The physical training regimen pushed students through conditioning exercises designed to build strength and endurance necessary for protection work. They ran obstacle courses, practiced hand-to-hand combat, and learned defensive positions that might save their lives in hostile situations. Most struggled with the physical demands, their pampered upbringings having prepared them poorly for genuine exertion. Emma participated with apparent effort while barely exerting herself, her farm girl cover story providing explanation for her superior conditioning. She allowed other students to outperform her occasionally,
maintaining the illusion of someone working hard to keep up rather than deliberately holding back capabilities that would have shocked her instructors. The composed response. The morning sun cast long shadows across the academy's training compound as Emma Blake stood at her dormitory window, watching Tyler Richardson and his followers gather in the courtyard below. Their laughter echoed off the stone walls as they prepared for another day of expensive education in a field they'd likely never master. Emma's reflection in the glass showed a composed face that revealed nothing of the calculations running beneath her calm exterior. Her room remained spartanly furnished despite having occupied it for 3 weeks. The single suitcase that had drawn so much mockery contained everything she needed to maintain her cover identity, though careful observers might have noticed that her few possessions were arranged with military precision. Each item occupied its designated position, ready for immediate departure if circumstances required rapid evacuation. The academy's morning routine began with physical conditioning at dawn, followed by classroom instruction, practical exercises, and evening seminars on specialized protection topics. Emma participated in every activity with quiet competence, her performance consistently above average but never exceptional enough to draw unwanted attention from instructors or classmates. During firearms training, she deliberately missed shots she could have made blindfolded, asking basic questions about weapons she could field strip and reassemble faster than most armorers. Her innocent Nebraska accent made even sophisticated tactical queries sound like simple curiosity, allowing her to gather information while maintaining her carefully constructed persona. Tyler Richardson's harassment had escalated in the days following the dining hall incident, though Emma absorbed each new humiliation with the same steady composure that had carried her through far worse situations. He'd organized betting pools on her training performance, started rumors about her scholarship background, and convinced several instructors that she required remedial assistance with basic concepts. Jessica Hartwell had taken a more subtle approach to torment, spreading whispered comments about Emma's appearance, hygiene, and social awkwardness that gradually isolated her from any potential allies among the student body. The pharmaceutical heiress possessed a talent for character assassination that would have impressed professional interrogators, though her targets had always been limited to social rivals rather than enemy combatants. Emma's tactical assessment of her environment continued to evolve as she learned the academy's patterns and procedures. She'd identified 17 different escape routes from the main building, cataloged the security system's weaknesses, and memorized the schedule of every guard patrol. The habits developed during years of covert operations couldn't be suppressed even in this supposedly safe educational setting. The other students remained unaware of the predator moving among them, focused instead on their social hierarchies and inherited privileges. They saw a quiet farm girl who posed no threat to their established order, someone to be dismissed or tormented based on their current mood rather than treated as a potential equal or rival. Emma's father had taught her that the most dangerous opponents were those who underestimated their adversaries, making tactical errors based on assumptions rather than careful observation. Commander James Blake's voice whispered through memory during moments when the harassment became particularly cruel, reminding her that patience was often a weapon more powerful than violence. The academy's training scenarios provided glimpses into how these privileged children would perform under actual pressure. Most froze when faced with simulated threats, their expensive education evaporating under stress that would barely register to someone with combat experience. Emma watched their panic with professional interest, noting which students might be capable of improvement, and which were fundamentally unsuited for protection work. Director Amanda Foster observed Emma with growing curiosity as the weeks passed, noting the discrepancy between her humble background and her consistent performance across multiple disciplines. During private moments, the director found herself wondering what recommendation letter had convinced the admissions board to offer a scholarship to someone with no apparent qualifications for their program. Emma's evening routine included studying academy materials that covered ground she'd learned through direct experience, though she maintained detailed notes that suggested eager learning rather than review of familiar concepts. Her handwriting was precise and economical, developed through years of mission briefings where clarity could mean the difference between success and catastrophic failure. The academy library became her refuge from social isolation, its quiet atmosphere providing space to process the daily accumulation of humiliations and tactical intelligence. She read voraciously,
though her choices ranged from security manuals to works on psychology and human behavior that might prove useful in understanding her tormentors' motivations. Tyler Richardson's father visited the academy regularly, his presence commanding immediate attention from staff and students alike. Marcus Richardson Sr. had built his private military empire through aggressive expansion and political connections, creating a dynasty that his son would inherit regardless of personal competence. Emma observed their interactions with interest, noting the subtle signs of disappointment in the father's expression when reviewing his heir's training progress. Jessica Hartwell's family connections provided her with insider information about faculty backgrounds, student evaluations and academy policies that she weaponized against targets like Emma. Her pharmaceutical dynasty had taught her to view information as power and other people as resources to be exploited rather than respected. Emma absorbed these attacks without visible reaction, though she cataloged every slight for potential future reference. The Academy's guest lecturers continued to provide insights into actual security work, their war stories both inspiring and sobering for students who'd never faced genuine danger. Emma listened to accounts of operations she'd participated in from different perspectives, fighting the urge to correct inaccuracies or provide missing context that would have revealed her true background. During hand-to-hand combat training, Emma allowed herself to be thrown and pinned by opponents she could have defeated without conscious effort, her apparent struggles providing entertainment for classmates who'd found a new source of amusement in her supposed incompetence. She absorbed bruises and minor injuries with the same stoic acceptance that had carried her through interrogation training. The Academy's medical scenarios tested students' ability to provide emergency care under stress, their performance rated on speed, accuracy and composure when faced with traumatic injuries. Emma participated with careful mediocrity, asking questions about procedures she could perform while unconscious, maintaining her cover despite the obvious inefficiency of deliberate ignorance. Tyler Richardson's performance during medical training revealed his fundamental unsuitability for protection work, his loud bravado crumbling when faced with realistic blood and apparent suffering. Emma watched his hands shake as he fumbled with basic bandaging techniques, noting that his expensive education had failed to prepare him for the psychological demands of their chosen profession. Jessica Hartwell approached medical scenarios with the same superficial competence she brought to every challenge, her focus more on maintaining her appearance than actually learning life-saving techniques. Emma observed her priority system with tactical interest, recognizing someone who would abandon protected clients at the first sign of personal danger. The Academy's communication systems provided students with training on encrypted radios, satellite phones, and digital coordination tools used in high-level protection details. Emma mastered the equipment quickly while maintaining her persona of someone struggling with unfamiliar technology, her questions revealing genuine curiosity about advances that had occurred since her last mission briefing. Director Foster's daily inspections became increasingly focused on Emma's progress, though the farm girl's consistent competence across multiple disciplines was beginning to strain the director's understanding of normal learning curves. Emma met these evaluations with respectful attention, providing explanations for her performance that fit her cover story while deflecting deeper scrutiny. The Academy's competitive culture encouraged students to challenge each other through informal contests and training exercises, their wealthy backgrounds having instilled the belief that life was a game with winners and losers rather than a serious endeavor requiring cooperation and sacrifice. Emma participated when directly challenged while avoiding voluntary displays of superior capability. Tyler Richardson organized elaborate hazing rituals disguised as training exercises, using his family's influence to ensure instructors overlooked behavior that would have resulted in immediate expulsion for less connected students. Emma endured these attacks with the same patience she'd shown toward enemy interrogation, recognizing that her tormentors had no understanding of actual psychological warfare. The Academy's evening seminars covered specialized topics like dignitary protection protocols, threat assessment methodologies, and crisis communication strategies that students would need if they actually intended to work in executive security, rather than simply add impressive credentials to their privileged resumes. Emma absorbed every detail while maintaining her facade of someone working hard to understand concepts that challenged her limited background. Jessica Hartwell's circle of admirers had expanded to include most of the female students, their shared contempt for Emma providing a bonding experience that reinforced their sense of superiority. Emma observed their group dynamics with professional interest, noting how quickly intelligent people could be manipulated into participating in cruelty when it provided social acceptance. The Academy's Technology Center housed surveillance equipment and analysis software that students learned to operate during advanced training modules, their instruction covering everything from facial recognition systems to communication intercept protocols. Emma familiarized herself with equipment she'd helped develop while asking basic questions that maintained her cover identity. Director Foster's private conversations with faculty members increasingly focused on the mystery of Emma Blake's admission to their program, though no one could locate the recommendation letter that had supposedly convinced the admissions board to offer her a scholarship. Emma remained unaware of these discussions while continuing to perform at levels that suggested natural ability rather than previous training. The Academy's final evaluation would determine which students received certification in executive protection, though Emma understood that most of her classmates viewed graduation as a formality rather than a genuine test of their capabilities. She prepared for assessment with the same methodical thoroughness she'd brought to every mission, though her goals remained very different from those of her wealthy classmates. The official rejection director Amanda Foster's office occupied the corner of the administration building, its floor-to-ceiling windows providing panoramic views of the Academy's training facilities, while reinforced glass ensured privacy for sensitive conversations. Emma Blake sat in the visitor's chair facing Foster's imposing desk, her hands folded in her lap as she waited for the verdict that would determine her future at Blackwater Academy. The office walls displayed Foster's military commendations alongside photographs of her with various government officials and corporate executives, a visual reminder of the connections that had made her current position possible. Emma's eyes catalogued every detail while maintaining an expression of respectful attention, her tactical assessment noting potential weapons, escape routes and communication devices within reach. Foster reviewed a thick file marked with Emma's name, her expression growing increasingly skeptical as she turned pages that seemed to contradict everything she'd observed during the past month of training. The director's military bearing commanded respect, but Emma recognized the signs of someone struggling with information that challenged her preconceived notions about appropriate candidates for their program. Miss Blake, Foster began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. I've been reviewing your application materials and training performance, and I find myself in an unusual position. She closed the file and leaned back in her leather chair, studying Emma with the intensity of someone trying to solve a complex puzzle. Emma waited silently, her breathing steady and controlled despite the tension building in the room. She'd faced far more intimidating interrogations during her military service, though maintaining her cover identity required projecting vulnerability rather than the confidence that had carried her through hostile questioning by enemy agents. Your scholarship application lists no relevant experience in security, military service, or law enforcement, Foster continued, her tone suggesting genuine confusion. No martial arts training, no weapons familiarity, no education beyond high school completion at a rural Nebraska institution that appears to focus primarily on agricultural subjects. The director stood and walked to her window, gazing out at the training complex where other students were practicing tactical movements under instructor supervision. Emma remained motionless in her chair, though her peripheral vision tracked Foster's movement while maintaining appropriate eye contact when the director looked in her direction. Yet your training performance has been remarkably consistent, Foster observed, turning back to face Emma directly. Not exceptional, mind you, but consistently competent across disciplines that should be completely foreign to someone with your stated background. Your firearms handling suggests familiarity despite having no official training record. Your medical responses indicate knowledge that extends beyond our basic instruction. Emma absorbed the criticism without defensive reactions, recognizing that Director Foster was fishing for information rather than making accusations. Her cover story had been carefully constructed to withstand casual scrutiny, though sustained investigation by someone with Foster's intelligence background posed genuine risks to her operational security. Director Foster, Emma replied in her soft Nebraska accent. I've been working hard to learn everything your instructors teach us. Maybe growing up on a farm gave me some advantages with physical work and staying calm under pressure, but I'm just trying my best to keep up with everyone else. The explanation was plausible and humble, deflecting Foster's concerns while reinforcing Emma's carefully constructed persona as someone whose natural abilities might explain her performance without revealing military training. Emma had learned that the most effective lies contain substantial elements of truth, making them nearly impossible to disprove through conventional investigation. Foster returned to her desk and opened the file again, reading passages that seemed to increase her skepticism rather than resolve her concerns. The admissions board received a recommendation letter supporting your application, though we've been unable to locate the original document in our files. The letter allegedly came from a retired military officer who praised your potential for security work, but no one on our staff remembers reviewing such a document. Emma's expression remained neutral despite the surge of concern that threatened her composure. Someone had intervened
on her behalf, manipulating the Academy's admission process in ways that suggested high-level access to their systems. The revelation raised questions about who was monitoring her activities, and what they hoped to accomplish by placing her at Blackwater Academy. I don't know anything about recommendation letters, ma'am, Emma said truthfully, since she'd been unaware of any external intervention in her application process. I just filled out the scholarship forms and hoped for the best. Getting accepted here was like a miracle for someone from my background. Director Foster studied Emma's face with the trained observation skills of someone who'd spent years evaluating personnel for sensitive positions. Emma met her gaze with apparent innocence while carefully controlling her micro-expressions to avoid revealing any indication of deception or concealed information. Miss Blake, Foster said finally, her tone becoming more formal, I'm going to be direct with you about your situation here. While your training performance has been adequate, I have serious concerns about whether someone with your background can succeed in our program's advanced phases. The director opened a different section of the file, revealing evaluation reports from various instructors that Emma couldn't read from her position across the desk. Foster's expression suggested the contents were not particularly favorable, though Emma had expected as much given the subtle hostility she'd encountered from several Academy staff members. Executive protection requires split-second decision-making under extreme stress, Foster continued, her voice taking on the lecturing tone of someone explaining harsh realities to a naive student. Our clients include world leaders, corporate executives and celebrities whose lives depend on their bodyguards' competence. There's no margin for error. No opportunity for on-the-job learning when bullets start flying. Emma nodded respectfully while internally noting that Director Foster had likely never been in actual combat situations herself, despite her military background. The Academy's training scenarios, while expensive and elaborate, couldn't replicate the psychological pressure of life or death situations that Emma had navigated successfully on multiple occasions. Your classmates come from backgrounds that prepared them for high-stress environments, Foster explained, gesturing toward the window where Tyler Richardson could be seen struggling with basic tactical movements. They understand the culture and expectations of the social circles they'll be protecting. They've been exposed to security procedures since childhood through their family's connections. The irony of Foster's statement wasn't lost on Emma as she watched Tyler Richardson stumble through movements that a properly trained 10-year-old could have executed flawlessly. The Academy director's faith in inherited competence revealed the fundamental flaw in their selection process, prioritizing connections over capability in ways that would prove catastrophic in real-world situations. Furthermore, Foster continued, pulling out another document that appeared to be a psychological evaluation, several instructors have expressed concerns about your social integration with the other students. Executive protection often requires seamless coordination with team members who come from similar backgrounds and share common references. Emma resisted the urge to point out that the social integration problem stemmed from systematic harassment by privileged students who viewed her as entertainment rather than a colleague. Foster's analysis ignored the toxic culture that the Academy had allowed to flourish among its wealthy clientele, focusing instead on Emma's failure to conform to their dysfunctional social hierarchy. I understand your concerns, Director, Emma replied carefully,
maintaining her humble demeanor while choosing words that wouldn't reveal her growing frustration with the academy's backwards priorities. I know I'm different from the other students, but I'm here to learn and work hard. I don't need to be popular to do a good job protecting people. Emma recognized the body language of someone who'd already made a decision and was simply going through the motions of justifying it to themselves and others. "Blake," Foster said with false sympathy, "I've made the difficult decision to place you on academic probation for the remainder of this semester. You'll be restricted to observer status during advanced tactical exercises with limited access to specialized training equipment and scenarios." The announcement struck Emma like a physical blow, though she absorbed it without visible reaction. Academic probation would effectively end her ability to complete the certification program, relegating her to watching others receive the training she needed while being systematically excluded from opportunities to demonstrate her actual capabilities. "Your dormitory assignment will be changed to a single room in the staff quarters," Foster continued, her voice taking on the bureaucratic tone of someone delivering unpleasant news with administrative efficiency. "You'll have access to basic meals and classroom instruction, but participation in field exercises will be limited to observation and equipment maintenance." Emma felt the walls closing in around her mission objectives, though she maintained her composure with the discipline that had carried her through far worse setbacks during her military career. The Academy's systematic exclusion would make it nearly impossible to access the intelligence she needed while providing perfect cover for anyone who might want to monitor her activities. "I appreciate the opportunity to continue observing, ma'am," Emma said with apparent gratitude that concealed her tactical assessment of the new restrictions. "I'll do whatever you think is best and try to learn as much as possible from watching the other students." Director Foster's expression softened slightly at Emma's humble acceptance of the punitive measures, suggesting that she'd expected more resistance from someone being effectively expelled from the program. Emma's composed reaction reinforced Foster's perception of her as a naive farm girl who didn't fully understand the implications of academic probation. "I want you to understand that this decision isn't personal," Foster added with the false kindness of someone salving their own conscience. "The Academy has standards to maintain, and we can't compromise the quality of our training program for sentimental reasons. Perhaps this experience will help you find a more suitable career path." Emma nodded respectfully while internally cataloging the security implications of her new status within the Academy hierarchy. Observer status would actually provide certain advantages for intelligence gathering, allowing her to move through restricted areas while being largely ignored by students and staff who no longer considered her a threat to their established order. The meeting concluded with administrative details about Emma's new living arrangements and restricted schedule, information delivered with the clinical efficiency of someone processing a bureaucratic transaction rather than dramatically altering another person's life trajectory. Foster's military bearing concealed any personal feelings she might have had about the decision. Emma left the director's office with steady steps that betrayed nothing of the rage building behind her careful composure. The Academy's corridor stretched before her like a gauntlet of whispered conversations and satisfied smirks from students who'd already learned about her change in status through the informal network that connected privileged children across institutional boundaries. Tyler Richardson waited near the administrative building entrance with Jessica Hartwell and their usual collection of admirers, their expressions showing barely contained glee at the news of Emma's academic probation. Tyler's satisfaction was particularly evident as he watched Emma descend the stone steps toward the main campus, his predatory smile suggesting he viewed her official humiliation as personal vindication. Well, Tyler announced loudly enough for nearby students to hear. "Looks like the farm girl finally got some honest feedback about her prospects here. I bet Director Foster gave her the speech about knowing your place and accepting reality." His laughter echoed off the building's stone facade as other students gathered to witness Emma's walk of shame. Jessica stepped forward with theatrical concern that fooled no one familiar with her capacity for cruelty. "Oh, you poor thing," she cooed with false sympathy. "It must be so disappointing to discover that good intentions can't overcome fundamental limitations. But don't worry, I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities for someone with your background in more appropriate fields." Emma continued walking without acknowledging their comments, her peripheral vision tracking the growing crowd of students who'd emerged from various buildings to witness her public disgrace. The academy's social dynamics ensured that news of her probation would spread throughout the campus within hours, cementing her status as a cautionary tale about the dangers of admitting unqualified candidates. "You know what this means, don't you?" Tyler called after her, his voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. "You get to watch real students learn advanced techniques while you sit in the corner taking notes like a secretary. Think of it as an extended internship in recognizing your betters." The cruel accuracy of his description stung more than Emma cared to admit, though she maintained her steady pace toward the dormitory building where she would collect her belongings before moving to staff quarters. The physical relocation was less important than the psychological impact of being officially categorized as unsuitable for the academy's primary mission. Emma's new room in the staff quarters occupied the basement level of an auxiliary building, its small window providing a view of the parking lot rather than the scenic campus grounds enjoyed by regular students. The furnishings were institutional and sparse, designed for temporary occupancy rather than the comfortable luxury provided to paying customers in the main dormitory. She unpacked her single suitcase with methodical precision, arranging her few belongings in patterns that would reveal any unauthorized searches while maintaining the appearance of simple organization. The room's isolation actually provided advantages for certain activities, though she would need to be careful about electronic surveillance that might monitor staff areas more intensively than student spaces. The evening meal that day was a solitary affair in the staff dining area, where Emma ate institutional food while listening to conversations between academy employees who discussed their charges with mixture of professional dedication and bemused tolerance. The staff members treated her with polite indifference, neither hostile nor welcoming towards someone who occupied an ambiguous position within their hierarchy. Emma's new schedule restricted her to classroom observation during morning lectures, equipment maintenance during practical exercises, and library access during evening study periods. The limitations were designed to minimize her interaction with regular students while ensuring she couldn't access sensitive training materials or specialized instruction that might compromise the academy's exclusive standards. The first day of her probationary status began with Tyler Richardson's loud announcement during breakfast that the Farm Girl Observer program had officially commenced. His theatrical presentation drawing appreciative laughter from students who viewed Emma's situation as entertainment rather than recognizing the systemic cruelty they were endorsing through their amusement. During weapons training, Emma was assigned to clean and maintain firearms while other students practiced marksmanship techniques she could have taught blindfolded. Her hands moved with professional competence as she field stripped and reassembled various weapons, the muscle memory so deeply ingrained that she had to consciously slow her movements to avoid revealing her extensive experience. The tactical exercise scenarios became particularly painful as Emma watched her former classmates stumble through movements and procedures that she could have executed flawlessly while unconscious. Tyler Richardson's incompetence was especially glaring during close-quarters combat simulations, his expensive gear and loud bravado unable to compensate for fundamental lacks in training and natural ability. Jessica Hartwell treated the advanced exercises like elaborate fashion shows, her focus remaining on maintaining her appearance rather than mastering techniques that might save lives in actual emergency situations. Emma observed her priority system with growing contempt, recognizing someone who would abandon protected clients without hesitation if personal safety became questionable. The Academy's guest lecturers continued their presentations on specialized security topics, though Emma was now relegated to sitting in the back corner rather than participating in discussions or asking questions that might reveal her background knowledge. She listened to war stories from operations she'd participated in while maintaining the expression of someone struggling to understand concepts beyond her limited experience. Director Foster's daily inspections became brief acknowledgments of Emma's presence rather than meaningful evaluations of her progress, the academic probation having effectively removed her from serious consideration as a future security professional. Emma met these perfunctory reviews with respectful attention while internally noting how quickly institutional indifference could replace active hostility.
The evening library sessions provided Emma's only genuine opportunity for advancement, allowing her to study advanced materials while avoiding the social dynamics that had made her regular classes increasingly uncomfortable. She read voraciously about tactical procedures, threat assessment methodologies, and crisis management strategies that might prove useful regardless of her official status within the academy. Tyler Richardson organized informal hazing sessions disguised as motivational exercises for Emma's benefit, using her probationary status as justification for increasingly creative forms of humiliation that pushed the boundaries of what even the academy's permissive culture would tolerate. Emma endured these attacks with stoic patience while cataloging psychological profiles that might prove useful in future operations. The academy's communication training continued without Emma's participation, as she was deemed unsuitable for learning encrypted radio protocols and coordination procedures used in high-level protection details. She observed the instruction from maintenance positions while mentally noting security vulnerabilities in systems she'd helped design during her military service. Jessica Hartwell's campaign of social isolation intensified following Emma's official probation, her pharmaceutical heiress background having taught her to view information as power and other people as resources to be exploited rather than respected. Emma absorbed these attacks without visible reaction while developing psychological profiles that revealed fundamental character flaws beneath the veneer of privileged sophistication. The academy's medical training scenarios became particularly frustrating as Emma watched students panic during simulated emergencies that she could have managed while treating actual combat wounds under enemy fire. Her probationary status prevented her from demonstrating competence that might have saved simulated lives, forcing her to witness preventable failures that would have been tragic in real-world situations. Director Foster's private conversations with faculty members increasingly focused on the wisdom of maintaining Emma's observer status, though most instructors supported the decision based on her humble background rather than objective assessment of her capabilities. Emma remained unaware of these discussions while continuing to perform maintenance duties that provided access to areas and information that regular students never encountered. The academy's competitive culture adapted to Emma's new status by treating her as a cautionary example rather than a potential rival, her probationary situation serving as confirmation that meritocracy would inevitably yield to inherited privilege in any system that mattered. Students used her situation to reinforce their own sense of entitlement while ignoring the systemic failures that her exclusion revealed. Tyler Richardson's father visited the academy during Emma's second week of probation, his presence commanding immediate attention from staff and students who understood that private military dynasties determined institutional policies regardless of official administrative structures. Emma observed their interactions while performing maintenance duties that rendered her nearly invisible to people focused on more important social dynamics. The academy's evening seminars continued without Emma's participation as advanced protection protocols were deemed inappropriate for someone with observer status who would never actually work in executive security. She listened from service corridors while performing cleaning duties that provided cover for intelligence gathering activities that her probationary status had inadvertently enabled. Jessica Hartwell's circle of admirers had expanded to include most of the female students, their shared contempt for Emma providing bonding experiences that reinforced their sense of superiority, while revealing the ease with which intelligent people could be manipulated into participating in systematic cruelty when it provided social acceptance and group identity. The Academy's Technology Center remained off-limits to Emma except for basic maintenance duties, though her probationary status actually provided better access to sensitive equipment than regular student privileges would have allowed. She familiarized herself with surveillance systems and analysis software while maintaining the appearance of someone performing routine cleaning tasks. Director Foster's final evaluation of Emma's probationary period approached with inevitable conclusion. Though Emma understood that the assessment would focus on social conformity rather than objective measures of competence or potential for improvement, she prepared for the meeting with tactical thoroughness while accepting that her official academy career was approaching its predetermined end. The Academy's culture had adapted to Emma's marginalized status by treating her presence as confirmation that their exclusive standards were both necessary and effective.
her official failure serving as validation for systematic discrimination that privileged inheritance over merit in ways that would prove catastrophic when graduates faced actual operational challenges that couldn't be solved through family connections or inherited wealth. Emma's isolation within the academy hierarchy had become complete, though her probationary status provided certain advantages for activities that regular students could never pursue without drawing unwanted attention from instructors and administrators who monitored their privileged charges with careful oversight designed to prevent embarrassing incidents that might damage institutional reputation. The weeks of systematic humiliation and official rejection had tested Emma's patience in ways that enemy torture had never managed, forcing her to maintain composure while watching incompetent people receive opportunities that her proven capabilities should have earned. The experience provided valuable insights into the psychology of inherited privilege while reinforcing lessons about institutional corruption that would prove useful in future operations. Director Foster's decision to place Emma on academic probation had effectively ended her official participation in the Academy's certification program, though the unintended consequences of that choice would soon reveal themselves in ways that no one at Blackwater Academy could have predicted or prepared for when their comfortable assumptions about merit and capability met the harsh realities of genuine crisis. The pattern of marginalization. The basement maintenance closet had become Emma Blake's unofficial headquarters during her weeks of academic probation, its cramped confines providing the only space at Blackwater Academy where she could work without constant supervision or mockery from students who viewed her presence as confirmation of their own superiority. The closet's industrial shelving held cleaning supplies and repair equipment, but Emma had arranged the space to serve multiple purposes that her official observers would never suspect. Her daily routine began before dawn in the staff quarters, where she performed calisthenics in silence while other academy employees slept peacefully in rooms designed for temporary occupancy rather than the luxury accommodations provided to paying students. Emma's exercises were military in their precision and intensity, maintaining physical conditioning that far exceeded the academy's fitness standards while appearing to be simple stretching routines if observed by casual surveillance. The morning cleanup duties assigned to her probationary status provided unprecedented access to every building on campus, allowing her to map security systems, identify communication networks, and catalog personnel patterns with systematic thoroughness. Emma moved through administrative offices, training facilities, and restricted areas with the institutional invisibility that rendered service workers effectively transparent to privileged individuals focused on more important concerns. Tyler Richardson had settled into a pattern of daily harassment that provided entertainment for his growing audience of admirers, his cruel creativity finding new ways to humiliate someone he viewed as safely beneath retaliation. Emma endured his attacks with composed silence while cataloging psychological vulnerabilities that revealed fundamental weaknesses beneath his inherited arrogance and expensive education. During weapons maintenance sessions, Emma cleaned and repaired firearms while listening to instruction she could have delivered with greater accuracy and practical insight than the Academy's expensive consultants. Her hands moved with professional competence as she serviced equipment that regular students handled with nervous uncertainty, their privileged backgrounds having provided no preparation for tools designed to take human lives. Jessica Hartwell had perfected a system of social warfare that isolated Emma completely from any potential allies among staff or students, her pharmaceutical heiress background having taught her to view relationships as resources to be exploited rather than connections to be valued. Emma absorbed these attacks while developing character assessments that revealed the fundamental emptiness beneath Jessica's polished exterior. The Academy's library remained Emma's evening refuge, though her probationary status limited her to basic reference materials rather than the advanced tactical manuals available to certified students. She read voraciously within her restrictions while using cleaning duties to access specialized collections that contained information relevant to her actual mission objectives. Director Foster's weekly evaluations had become perfunctory exercises in institutional box-checking, her initial curiosity about Emma's background replaced by bureaucratic indifference towards someone who no longer represented a potential success story for the Academy's marketing materials. Emma met these reviews with respectful attention while internally noting how quickly official interest could evaporate once convenient categorization had been achieved. The Academy's guest lecturers continued their presentations on specialized security topics, though Emma was now relegated to cleaning duties during these sessions rather than participating in discussions that might reveal her extensive background knowledge. She listened from service positions while performing maintenance tasks that provided perfect cover for intelligence gathering activities. Tyler Richardson's father had established a pattern of monthly visits that coincided with major training milestones, his presence ensuring that his son received favorable evaluations regardless of actual performance levels. Emma observed these interactions while performing cleaning duties that rendered her effectively invisible to people focused on maintaining important family relationships and business connections. The tactical exercise scenarios had become particularly painful for Emma to witness as she watched students stumble through procedures she could execute flawlessly while carrying twice the recommended equipment load. Her probationary status prevented her from offering assistance or corrections that might have prevented simulated casualties in scenarios based on actual combat situations she'd survived. Jessica Hartwell's campaign of systematic isolation had expanded to include manipulation of Academy staff, her family's financial contributions providing leverage that ensured Emma received the most unpleasant maintenance assignments while being excluded from any activities that might demonstrate her actual capabilities. Emma performed these duties with quiet efficiency while noting how easily institutional systems could be corrupted through economic pressure. The Academy's communication training continued without Emma's participation as encrypted radio protocols and coordination procedures were deemed inappropriate for someone with observer status. She gained access to these systems through maintenance duties that provided better intelligence opportunities than official student participation would have offered. The medical training facility required extensive cleaning and equipment maintenance that brought Emma into contact with trauma simulation devices and surgical training equipment. She performed these duties while listening to instruction that covered procedures she'd mastered during actual battlefield conditions. Her hands steady as she cleaned artificial blood from mannequins designed to replicate wounds she'd treated on living human beings. Director Foster's private conversations with faculty members increasingly focused on Emma's social adjustment problems rather than her consistent technical competence. The Academy's culture having prioritized conformity over capability in ways that would prove catastrophic when graduates faced real-world situations requiring independent thought and decisive action under extreme pressure. Emma's isolation within the Academy hierarchy provided certain advantages for activities that regular students could never pursue without attracting unwanted attention from instructors who monitored their privilege charges with protective oversight. She used her marginalized status to access restricted areas and sensitive information while maintaining the
appearance of someone performing routine maintenance duties. The Academy's evening seminars on advanced protection protocols continued without Emma's official participation, though her cleaning duties during these sessions provided opportunities to gather intelligence about operational procedures and client requirements that might prove useful in future missions. She absorbed every detail while maintaining the invisible presence that her probationary status had imposed. Tyler Richardson's harassment had escalated to include physical intimidation disguised as accidental contact, his expensive tactical training providing justification for increasingly aggressive behavior towards someone he viewed as unable to retaliate effectively. Emma absorbed these attacks while calculating response options that would neutralize the threat without revealing her extensive combat training. The Academy's competitive culture had adapted to treat Emma's probationary status as confirmation that their exclusive standards were both necessary and effective, her official failure serving as validation for discrimination that privileged inheritance over demonstrated competence. Students used her situation to reinforce their own entitlement while ignoring the systemic corruption that her treatment revealed. Jessica Hartwell organized informal social events that specifically excluded Emma while ensuring she was assigned cleaning duties that forced her to witness gatherings designed to celebrate her marginalization. Emma performed these tasks while observing group dynamics that revealed how quickly civilized behavior could deteriorate when authority figures provided tacit approval for systematic cruelty. The Academy's Technology Center required regular maintenance that provided Emma with access to surveillance equipment and analysis software during off hours when regular monitoring was reduced. She familiarized herself with systems she'd helped develop while maintaining the appearance of someone performing routine technical support duties. Director Foster's assessment reports on Emma's probationary status emphasized social integration failures while minimizing technical competence that consistently exceeded Academy standards for regular students. Emma remained unaware of these evaluations while continuing to demonstrate capabilities that contradicted every assumption about her background and training. The Academy's physical training regimen continued without Emma's participation, though her cleaning duties in the gymnasium provided opportunities to observe conditioning exercises that fell far short of military standards. She maintained her own fitness through covert training that would have impressed the Academy's most experienced instructors if they'd witnessed her actual capabilities. Tyler Richardson's circle of admirers had expanded to include students from wealthy families who viewed participation in Emma's humiliation as social currency that enhanced their status within the Academy's privilege-based hierarchy. Emma cataloged these relationships while performing service duties that granted access to personal information about students whose family connections might prove strategically important. The Academy's weapons training scenarios provided Emma with maintenance duties that required handling firearms while students practiced marksmanship techniques she could have mastered blindfolded. She observed their struggles with professional interest while noting safety violations that would have resulted in immediate expulsion if committed by someone without family connections to protect them. Jessica Hartwell's pharmaceutical heiress background had taught her to view information as power, leading her to establish an intelligence network among Academy staff that provided advance warning about any activities that might benefit Emma or undermine the social order they'd established. Emma monitored these communications through electronic systems she accessed during maintenance duties. The Academy's dining facility required extensive cleaning that provided Emma with opportunities to observe social dynamics during meals where students reinforced hierarchical relationships through calculated inclusion and exclusion. She performed these duties while cataloging personality assessments that revealed fundamental character flaws beneath the veneer of privileged sophistication. Director Foster's weekly staff meetings increasingly focused on managing Emma's probationary status in ways that minimized potential liability while maintaining the Academy's reputation for exclusive standards. Emma remained unaware of these discussions while continuing to perform duties that provided access to administrative information about Academy policies and procedures. The Academy's culture of inherited privilege had created an environment where Emma's systematic marginalization was viewed as natural and necessary rather than recognizing the institutional corruption that her treatment revealed. Students and staff participated in discrimination that would prove catastrophic when their comfortable assumptions about merit and capability encountered genuine crisis situations requiring competence rather than connections. Emma's weeks of official rejection and systematic humiliation had tested her patience in ways that enemy interrogation had never achieved, forcing her to maintain composure while witnessing incompetent people receive opportunities that her proven abilities should have earned. The experience provided valuable intelligence about institutional psychology while reinforcing lessons about systemic corruption that would prove useful when circumstances finally provided her with opportunities to demonstrate her true capabilities. The Academy's evening routine concluded with Emma's return to her basement quarters where she processed the day's intelligence while maintaining communication protocols with handlers who monitored her situation through channels that bypassed Academy surveillance systems. Her probationary status had inadvertently provided better access to sensitive information than official student participation would have offered. Though the personal cost of maintaining her cover identity continued to accumulate in ways that tested even her extensively trained psychological resilience. Director Foster's final evaluation of Emma's probationary period was scheduled for the following week, though Emma understood that the assessment would focus on social conformity rather than objective measures of competence or potential. She prepared for this meeting with tactical thoroughness while accepting that her official academy career was approaching its predetermined conclusion. Unaware that external circumstances were about to provide opportunities for demonstration that would shock everyone who had participated in her systematic marginalization and official rejection. The hidden preparation. The morning mist clung to the academy grounds like smoke from an extinguished fire as Emma Blake moved through her pre-dawn routine in the basement maintenance facility. Her movements were precise and economical, each stretch and exercise designed to maintain combat readiness while appearing to be simple flexibility work if observed by academy surveillance systems. The institutional fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she prepared for another day of systematic humiliation disguised as educational opportunity. Emma's assigned maintenance schedule had expanded over the past 3 weeks to include areas that regular students never accessed, providing her with comprehensive knowledge of the academy's infrastructure and security protocols. She understood the building's electrical systems better than most engineers, had memorized every camera angle and blind spot, and could navigate the facility's service tunnels in complete darkness. The academy's attempt to marginalize her had inadvertently created the perfect intelligence gathering opportunity. The weapons vault required daily cleaning and inventory maintenance tasks that brought Emma into contact with firearms and tactical equipment worth millions of dollars. She handled each weapon with professional competence while maintaining her facade of someone learning through observation rather than reviewing familiar systems. Her fingers moved across trigger mechanisms and safety systems with muscle memory so deeply ingrained that she had to consciously slow her movements to avoid revealing extensive combat experience. Tyler Richardson's harassment campaign had evolved into elaborate psychological warfare designed to break Emma's composure through systematic humiliation and social isolation. He organized betting pools on her daily performance, circulated rumors about her personal hygiene and family background, and convinced other students to treat her presence as entertainment rather than acknowledging her humanity. Emma absorbed each attack while cataloging intelligence about his personality structure and operational patterns. The academy's medical training facility housed trauma simulation equipment that Emma maintained while listening to instruction she could have delivered with greater accuracy than the expensive consultants brought in to teach privileged students. She cleaned artificial blood from mannequins designed to replicate wounds she'd treated on actual human beings under enemy fire, her hands steady as she processed the irony of her situation. Jessica Hartwell had perfected a campaign of character assassination that isolated Emma from any potential allies among students or staff, using her family's pharmaceutical empire connections to ensure that academy personnel treated Emma with professional indifference rather than recognizing her consistent competence across multiple disciplines. Emma monitored these manipulations while developing psychological profiles that revealed fundamental weaknesses beneath Jessica's polished exterior. Director Foster's weekly evaluations had become bureaucratic rituals focused on social integration rather than technical performance. Her military background apparently insufficient to recognize operational capabilities that exceeded academy standards by orders of magnitude. Emma participated in these meetings with respectful attention while internally noting how institutional bias could blind intelligent people to obvious contradictions in their assessment criteria. The Academy's guest lecturers continued presenting material on specialized security topics, though Emma was relegated to cleaning duties during these sessions rather than participating in discussions that might reveal her extensive background knowledge. She listened to war stories from operations she'd participated in while maintaining the expression of someone struggling to understand concepts beyond her limited experience. Emma's evening routine included studying advanced tactical manuals that she accessed through maintenance duties in the library's restricted sections, absorbing information that regular students would never encounter during their expensive but superficial training program. She read voraciously about threat assessment methodologies and crisis management strategies while maintaining detailed notes that suggested eager learning rather than review of familiar concepts. The Communication Training Center required extensive maintenance that provided Emma with access to encrypted radio systems and coordination protocols during off hours when regular monitoring was reduced.
She familiarized herself with equipment upgrades that had occurred since her last mission briefing while testing security vulnerabilities that could be exploited if circumstances required emergency communication with external support networks. Tyler Richardson's father had established a pattern of surprise visits designed to evaluate his son's progress while ensuring favorable treatment from Academy staff who understood that private military dynasties controlled institutional policies regardless of official administrative structures. Emma observed these interactions while performing cleaning duties that rendered her effectively invisible to people focused on maintaining important family relationships. The tactical exercise scenarios had become particularly frustrating for Emma to witness as she watched students panic during simulated emergencies that she could have managed while treating actual combat wounds under hostile fire. Her probationary status prevented her from offering assistance that might have prevented simulated casualties in scenarios based on real-world situations where her expertise had saved lives. Jessica Hartwell's social manipulation network had expanded to include most Academy staff members, her family's financial contributions providing leverage that ensured Emma received the most dangerous and unpleasant maintenance assignments while being excluded from activities that might demonstrate her actual capabilities. Emma performed these duties with quiet efficiency while cataloging corruption patterns that revealed systemic vulnerabilities. The Academy's competitive culture had adapted to treat Emma's marginalized status as confirmation that exclusive standards were necessary and effective, her official failure serving as validation for discrimination that privileged inheritance over demonstrated competence. Students used her situation to reinforce their own entitlement while remaining blind to institutional corruption that her treatment revealed. Emma's access to restricted areas during maintenance duties had provided comprehensive intelligence about Academy operations, client requirements, and security protocols that regular students would never encounter during their sanitized training experience. She understood the institution's actual mission better than most instructors, having gained insights that official participation could never have provided. The Academy's evening seminars on advanced protection protocols continued without Emma's participation, though her cleaning duties during these sessions allowed her to gather intelligence about operational procedures and threat assessment methodologies that might prove useful in future missions. She absorbed every detail while maintaining the invisible presence that her probationary status had imposed. Tyler Richardson had begun incorporating physical intimidation into his harassment campaign, using his tactical training to justify increasingly aggressive behavior toward someone he viewed as unable to retaliate effectively. Emma absorbed these attacks while calculating response options that would neutralize multiple threats without revealing combat capabilities that would compromise her operational security. The Academy's technology center housed surveillance equipment and analysis software that Emma maintained during night shifts when regular monitoring was minimal, allowing her to familiarize herself with systems she'd helped develop during her military service. She tested electronic countermeasures and communication intercept capabilities while maintaining the appearance of performing routine technical support duties. Director Foster's private conversations with faculty members increasingly focused on managing Emma's probationary status to minimize potential liability while maintaining the Academy's reputation for exclusive standards. Emma remained unaware of these discussions while continuing to demonstrate technical competence that contradicted every assumption about her background and training. The Academy's physical training regimen excluded Emma from participation, though her cleaning duties in the gymnasium provided opportunities to observe conditioning exercises that fell far short of military standards she'd exceeded during basic training. She maintained her own fitness through covert exercises that would have impressed the Academy's most experienced instructors if they'd witnessed her actual capabilities. Tyler Richardson's circle of admirers had grown to include students whose families controlled defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, and political dynasties. Their participation in Emma's systematic humiliation serving as social currency that enhanced their status within the Academy's privilege-based hierarchy. Emma cataloged these relationships while accessing personal information about students whose connections might prove strategically valuable. Jessica Hartwell's pharmaceutical heiress background had taught her to view relationships as resources to be exploited, leading her to establish intelligence networks among Academy personnel that provided advance warning about any developments that might benefit Emma or undermine their established social order. Emma monitored these communications through electronic systems she accessed during maintenance duties. The Academy's dining facility operations required Emma to work during meal periods when students reinforced hierarchical relationships through calculated inclusion and exclusion. Their conversations revealing family business connections and personal vulnerabilities that could be weaponized if circumstances required leverage against specific individuals. Emma performed cleaning duties while cataloging intelligence that accumulated like compound interest. The weapons training scenarios provided Emma with maintenance duties that required handling firearms while students practiced marksmanship techniques she could have mastered while blindfolded and carrying full combat loads. She observed their struggles with professional interest while noting safety violations that would have resulted in immediate disciplinary action if committed by someone without family connections to protect them. Emma's weeks of systematic marginalization had tested her psychological resilience in ways that enemy interrogation had never achieved, forcing her to maintain composure while watching incompetent people receive opportunities that her proven abilities should have earned through merit rather than inheritance. The experience provided valuable insights about institutional corruption while reinforcing lessons about human nature that would prove useful when circumstances finally allowed demonstration of her true capabilities. The Academy's culture of inherited privilege had created an environment where Emma's treatment was viewed as natural and necessary rather than recognizing the systemic discrimination that her situation revealed. Students and staff participated in corruption that would prove catastrophic when their comfortable assumptions about merit and capability encountered genuine crisis situations requiring competence rather than connections. Director Foster's final evaluation of Emma's probationary period was scheduled for the following day, though Emma understood that the assessment would focus on social conformity rather than objective measures of technical performance or potential for improvement. She prepared for this meeting with tactical thoroughness while accepting that her official academy career was approaching its predetermined conclusion. The Academy's evening routine concluded with Emma's return to her basement quarters where she maintained communication with handlers who monitored her situation through channels that bypassed Academy surveillance systems. Her probationary status had provided better intelligence access than official student participation would have offered, though the personal cost of maintaining her cover identity continued accumulating in ways that tested her extensively trained psychological defenses. Emma's preparation during these weeks of official rejection had been comprehensive and methodical, her systematic marginalization inadvertently providing opportunities to develop complete understanding of Academy operations, personnel structures, and security vulnerabilities. She'd identified every potential weapon, memorized evacuation routes, and cataloged individual psychological profiles that revealed how each person might react under extreme pressure. The irony wasn't lost on Emma that Tyler Richardson's campaign of harassment had forced her to develop contingency plans for scenarios involving hostile action within the Academy itself, his escalating aggression requiring tactical assessment of threat levels and response options that might become necessary if his behavior crossed lines that even her operational discipline couldn't tolerate indefinitely. Jessica Hartwell's social warfare had inadvertently provided Emma with comprehensive intelligence about Academy personnel, their family connections, financial vulnerabilities, and personal secrets that could be leveraged if circumstances required manipulation of institutional power structures. The pharmaceutical heiress's talent for character assassination had revealed information networks that Emma could exploit when the time came to demonstrate her actual capabilities. The Academy's systematic discrimination had created conditions where Emma's eventual revelation would have maximum psychological impact on people who'd invested heavily in maintaining their superiority through exclusion rather than excellence. Their comfortable assumptions about merit and capability were about to encounter harsh realities that would shatter decades of inherited privilege and institutional corruption. Emma Blake sat in her basement quarters as midnight approached, processing intelligence she'd gathered while enduring weeks of humiliation that had tested her resolve but ultimately strengthened her preparation for challenges that lay ahead. Tomorrow would bring Director Foster's final evaluation and official termination of her academy career, but external circumstances were already in motion that would provide opportunities for demonstration beyond anything these privileged children could imagine or survive.
Her father's voice whispered through memory as she reviewed tactical assessments and contingency plans developed during her systematic marginalization. Commander James Blake's lessons about patience and preparation echoing through decades of training that had forged her into one of the most dangerous individuals these wealthy students would ever encounter. Soon they would discover exactly what kind of pressure Emma Blake could handle, and their expensive education would prove worthless when confronted with genuine capability that couldn't be purchased or inherited. The academy slept peacefully around her, its students dreaming of inherited success while remaining oblivious to the storm that was gathering beyond their protected walls. Emma maintained her vigil in silence, every sense alert for signs that their comfortable world was about to encounter realities that would test their courage, competence, and character in ways their privileged upbringings had never prepared them to face. Her preparation was complete. Tomorrow would begin the demonstration that would reveal who belonged in the world of executive protection and who had simply been playing expensive games with their parents' money, while Emma Blake quietly became the most dangerous person at Blackwater Academy. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.